4. Going places. Chapter 7. Bringing emotional intelligence to work. Taking your game to the next level. How can you use emotional intelligence to advance your career? Don't bother just to be better than your contemporaries or predecessors. Try to be better than yourself. William Faulkner. Emotions don't stay home just because we head to work. They stick with us all day, like an annoying bunch of backseat drivers. The sooner you become aware of your emotions and get to know them well, the sooner you will take back control of your work. Understanding and managing your emotions is the only way to get the most from each day and head where you want to go in your career. Although in our own work emotional challenges surface daily, one evening we shared stands out as a poignant example. It illustrates emotions we understood and managed to our benefit, as well as others that took us by surprise. That evening, we arrived at the North Tower of a high-rise hotel in downtown San Diego to kick off an emotional intelligence certification program. Many professional trainers were in attendance, looking to build their repertoire of programs. There's always pressure when we speak to these groups. Participants come from all over the United States and other parts of the world, and they expect a lot from the training. The seminar room was located on the mezzanine floor, a comfortable distance from the hustle and bustle of the city streets below. The seminar team was well prepared, and things kicked off to a smooth start. Little did we know that a visitor was sneaking into the hotel through the service door. Travis was standing by the podium, explaining the finer points of social competence, when a stranger entered. He was easily 6 feet tall, with dark matted hair, drooping shoulders, and heavily stained clothes. You could hear a pin drop as he made his way between the maze of tables crowding the floor. His filthy clothes brushed several of the attendees as he made his way to the front of the room. The stranger stopped directly in front of Travis and took a seat. Even though he was no longer standing, his presence was larger than life. As a trained speaker is bound to do, Travis didn't show the audience how much of a surprise this was. Unexpected situations arise far too often when you're in front of an audience, and letting them know you're losing control is a death march. After a brief moment, the visitor leaned forward to Travis and asked softly, "Can I have a glass of water?" Travis looked over at the man and then to the sweaty pitcher of ice water in front of him and the 6 empty glasses circling it. Hard to say no to that, he thought. He smiled at the audience and poured his guest a glass of water. After taking a drink, the man leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs, and settled in for a thought-provoking evening on emotional intelligence. Travis continued on with his presentation, keeping a wary eye on the scruffy new stranger in the front row. Jean was waiting to speak, standing on the side of the room closest to the doors. Her mind churned through many thoughts at once. Clearly a homeless man, but why is he being so bold? He was so intentional about going to the front of the room. Is he going to start harassing our participants? How did he get in here in the first place? She looked at Travis, who was gallantly moving forward, though no one in the room, herself included, could concentrate on a word he was saying. She snapped back into the realization that she would have to be the one to do something. She took Travis's calmness as a silent, "Okay, Jean, I'll stall them while you go get the hotel staff." She bolted out the door. Her dash down the seemingly infinitely long corridor was complicated by her new black skirt and heels. Jean's thoughts raced with her. Why isn't there anyone in the other conference rooms? How are Travis and the audience doing back there? Where are the hotel staff? She found her first hotel staff person in the business center and quickly explained the situation. The woman behind the counter immediately picked up the phone to dial security. The voice on the other end assured her that help would arrive shortly. Her confidence bolstered a little, Jean ran back to the room. When she entered, she found Travis right where she had left him, speaking in front of a large room of very quiet people. She could sense what a strange experience this was for the audience. She peeked out the door down the long hallway. Not a security guard in sight. She fidgeted in the doorway while a couple of more minutes passed. Finally, she had had enough. Her heart still racing from the run, Jean held up her hands and yelled over Travis's voice echoing from the speakers. "Why don't we all take a break out in the hallway?" People sprang from their chairs like students hearing the bell signaling the start of summer. Just as the last audience members exited the room, security guards in rubber gloves burst through the door and made a beeline for the homeless man, still seated in the front row. The unexpected visitor that evening demonstrated just how loud emotions can get and how easily they can drown out the work at hand. Our hushed seminar room was screaming with intense feelings. Did they get in the way of the task at hand? Absolutely. It's unlikely that anyone will remember what Travis presented while the stranger was in the room that night. Everyone will certainly remember the visitor and how he or she felt while he was there. He even made it into this book. That is the power of emotions at work. Defining moments. We work hard to understand emotional intelligence and make it accessible to people everywhere. We work closely together and often find we have unique emotions and perspectives on the same situation. As Jean stood at the side of the seminar room, her thoughts put her on immediate alert. Travis's experience working with the mentally ill gave him a different perspective. He recognized the man as a likely sufferer of the negative form of schizophrenia. People in this state typically lack the energy or motivation to harm others. Travis was also motivated to maintain his train of thought and avoid looking out of control. He continued speaking in the hope that the situation would be resolved quickly. The tension in the room that evening dragged on too long. Travis's emotional experience of the situation was not in line with that of the audience members. One woman, whose husband works with the homeless, praised Travis for how he had dealt with the man. But the majority of the audience felt nervous. Both women and men were uncomfortable with the visitor and wanted the session to break up immediately. This all happened shortly after the tragedy of September 11, 2001, and multiple audience members feared that the man's layers of clothing might hide a bomb or other dangerous weapon. How did so much happen in just a few moments? Everyone we spoke to later told us that the situation had aroused strong emotions. Some said that the moment the man walked in the room, you could feel the tension in the air. Travis used self-management to stay poised in front of the audience, but ironically, he was speaking about social awareness. He didn't focus enough on the others' feelings to make them comfortable. A closer look at the audience members' faces would have cued him to stop speaking. He fell into a common trap of a social situation that arouses strong emotion. Having to stay more focused on others than on yourself to maneuver through it successfully. Jean also fell into a common emotional trap. Her emotions had her running down the hall looking for security, when a little more reflection should have sent her back to the room to break the session first. Once she was back in the room and paused for a moment to think, she quickly realized she could cut through the tension by calling for a break. It's even interesting that no one in the audience raised a hand to request a break, even though all of them had studied group training methods. Emotions were driving everyone's actions or inactions that night. All the emotions we felt that evening served a purpose. They motivated us to think and take action. The better we understood our emotions, the easier it was to move through the problem. The balance between thought and feeling defined our level of success, as it always will in difficult situations. There was no clear right or wrong way to address the challenge before us. This is usually the case. Only when we reviewed the situation later did we discover that some of our actions had been more effective than others. The renowned Harvard Business School professor Joseph L. Badaracco, Jr. describes how the moments that shape our careers are often those when we must choose between right and right. When there is no right or wrong answer, emotions are critical. They are usually the deciding factor that enables us to choose one direction or the other. If you use your emotional intelligence skills at work, they will steer you through the important decisions that will define your career. Most days at work do not include homeless people joining you unannounced, but emotions are often as active, varied, and ready to surface as they were for us that evening. Understand that emotions will at times appear to take over, but you always retain the option of managing them to achieve some purpose. Taking emotional intelligence to work means becoming more adept at noticing the emotions you feel in a variety of situations, getting better at managing the feelings that get in your way, and giving yourself permission to practice new behaviors. You bring your feelings to work each day, whether you pay attention to them or not. Emotions are present in every conversation you have, every phone call you take, and every decision you make. The intensity and variety of emotions that can surface over the course of a day are astounding. We find that people experience an average of 27 emotions each waking hour. With nearly 17 waking hours each day, you have about 456 emotional experiences from the time you get up until the time you go to bed. This means that more than 3,000 emotional reactions guide you through each week and more than 150,000 each year. Of all the emotions you will experience in your lifetime, nearly 2 million of them will happen during working hours. It's no wonder that people who manage emotions well are easier to work with and more likely to achieve what they set out to do. Communication and quiet conflict. Communication and conflict are paired because they are practically mutually exclusive. It is hard to have one of them if you have the other. But strangely, good communication can't always prevent large conflicts in the workplace. Why? Because you can't completely avoid conflict. The key is to work through issues and important problems before they grow to the point that they are considered to be conflicts. Conflict results from avoiding an issue and failing to address it constructively head-on. Interpersonal conflicts, like all our problems, need to be addressed when they are big enough to see, yet still small enough to solve. Quiet conflict grows with unspoken signals, backhanded comments, and bubbling tension. Quiet conflict feeds off of a lack of communication and a lack of effort to understand why the other person is defensive or seething. Quiet conflict is the result of issues that fester long enough to let emotional involvement grow beyond the point of acting rationally. Damaged pride and hurt feelings are the first signs of quiet conflict. They signal that the parties involved have moved beyond the point of being constructive. How does simple, poor communication grow into quiet conflict? Let's examine a typical situation at work to see how it can grow into a conflict. You are in your office working on an important document. Lynn walks in with an idea for the project the two of you are currently tasked with. Less than a minute into her commentary, something she says reminds you that you forgot to return an important call from a customer you met last week. You suddenly feel anxious, and from then on, nothing Lynn says matters. You want this feeling to go away, but it won't until you make the call. A common response we see in this situation involves letting Lynn continue talking, completely unaware that you have tuned her out. As you dwell on the problem and try to figure out how you are going to handle it, she moves through her points, assuming that the odd look on your face is a sign of disapproval. Finally, she finishes and you rush her out of your office, telling her that you have something important to take care of. To spare yourself the embarrassment of the situation you have created with the customer, you skirt the details of why you are sending Lynn out the door so quickly. This is likely to leave Lynn thinking that you don't care to listen to any opinions other than your own. Without an explanation on your part, all she sees is the odd look on your face and your cold distance from the discussion. Such a response leaves room for improvement because your feelings about the forgotten call taint the current interaction. Now you have two problems: the late call and a resentful coworker. What would the emotionally intelligent response in this situation be? It would probably be to let the realization of the forgotten call sink in for a moment and pause to catch your breath. Without wasting any more time, you should speak up and tell Lynn what you need to go do and how it's affecting your state of mind. You should ask for her understanding and quickly schedule time to loop back with her later that day. Lynn would leave your office so you could make the call, and later that morning, you could drop by her office to show that you want to continue the conversation. This response is emotionally intelligent because it leads you to productive action while taking care of your current responsibility to your coworker. Lynn will likely notice this and appreciate it. In the heat of the moment, it's unlikely that most people will successfully address all of the concerns above. Worry about a customer is certain to cloud anyone's thinking. Good communication comes from having the courage to tell Lynn what's going on right away, no matter how you do it. When you explain yourself to Lynn, you create an opportunity to connect with her and keep two troublesome situations from simmering the rest of the day. Taking your team to the next level. How can your team use emotional intelligence to achieve its goals? Whatever we have accomplished has been because other people have helped us. Walt Disney. Experts agreed that the Space Shuttle Challenger would explode if it were launched in very cold weather. It was 36 degrees Fahrenheit when Challenger took off on January 28, 1986, and several engineers had made attempts to cancel the flight. Why did NASA launch anyway? While official documents put the blame on two causes, malfunction of a special part called an O-ring, and gross mismanagement by both NASA executives and their contractors, a lack of team emotional intelligence also contributed to the tragic accident. Roger Beaujolais was an experienced engineer who joined the O-ring improvement effort the summer before the launch. He worked for months attempting to fix its cold weather defects, but in the end, his team was unable to create a seal that would hold in extreme circumstances. The day before the launch, they delivered 14 view graphs and a presentation to NASA executives detailing their concerns about the risks of conducting a launch at the forecasted temperature. The only quantifiable data the group had to prove their concern was outdated. They ended their presentation with a recommendation not to launch below 53 degrees. The NASA group at the Kennedy Space Center did not receive the news well. They deliberated briefly and came back with the news that they intended to launch. Their expert argued that launching in the cold could be a non-issue. Roger's boss turned to his team and announced that they needed to make a management decision. Roger snatched a photograph that demonstrated the risk of launching in the cold and threw it onto the table. His teammate Arnie jumped in to explain and drew a picture of the problem. Their boss stood unflinchingly, with an unfriendly look in his eyes. He was not interested in their explanation. Roger and his team sat helplessly while 4 executives from his company held a closed-door discussion, then returned to the meeting and recommended a launch to NASA. Roger's team, feeling defeated, stood by angry but silent while NASA accepted the recommendation to launch. He later said, "The change in decision so upset me that I do not remember Stanley Reinhardt of NASA asking if anyone had anything else to say over the teleconference. The teleconference was then disconnected, so I immediately left the room." The engineering team's feelings of helplessness smothered their fury. When asked if they had any final comments, they chose not to remind their superiors and the team from NASA of their recommendation to cancel the launch. The team's judgment foretold a disaster, yet they passively accepted their superior's decision. They overlooked the difference between typical feelings of frustration and exceptional feelings of anger, sadness, fury, and helplessness. The power of team emotional intelligence. Just as a person has emotional intelligence skills, a group of people working as a team have a collective emotional intelligence. As in the case of Roger's engineering team, emotions can explain how a group will act in unison. Team emotional intelligence is a group style of relating to one another, making decisions, and responding to other groups in the organization. This concept was first introduced in 1998 in the Harvard Business Review. Members of emotionally intelligent teams respond constructively in emotionally uncomfortable situations, influencing one another positively. Simply put, members of emotionally intelligent teams get better results and experience deeper satisfaction from working together. The basic model for team emotional intelligence is similar to that of individual emotional intelligence, though the largest part of the focus is on the team as a group. Team emotional intelligence focuses heavily on management skills, managing the emotions of the team members, managing the relationships among the team members, and managing the relationships that the team has with outside individuals and groups. The core awareness skill is simply being able to identify and understand emotions as they surface among group members. The 4 core team emotional intelligence skills are emotional awareness, emotion management, internal relationship management, and external relationship management. Team emotional awareness. Team emotional awareness is the team's ability to accurately perceive the emotions that influence the group. This includes recognizing how each team member tends to respond to specific situations and people. For example, consider a team whose presentation to the CEO has just been postponed a month. They have been working hard on this project together, and the setback is badly timed. The team collectively feels this is a big disappointment, and the group members sit around the table griping about all the things that will not get done according to the deadlines they have projected. A team with emotional awareness skills will recognize the frustration and discontent in the air and allow members to express their disappointment. Stifling this type of expression will only prolong the griping. The team must discuss what its various members are feeling and how it will influence their plans. The team's awareness will only make its planning more effective. Team emotional awareness is a large product of how well members recognize the emotions that surface and influence their work. Do people know what happens to the team when members are bored, overly excited, defensive, losing hope, or threatened? Do members have similar or different reactions to the same situations? Are feelings taking over discussions? Or are they repressed and never explored? The answers to these questions indicate a team's emotional tendencies. Tendencies are repeated patterns of responding when emotions surface in the group. The team members should explore the group's tendencies with emotions in order to build their emotional awareness skills. Just as organizations have cultures in which certain behaviors are encouraged and others discouraged, each team develops its own microculture. There are unspoken rules about how much or how little emotions can be acknowledged and explored. Some teams relish strong feelings, whereas others will avoid an uncomfortable feeling at all costs. The emotionally aware team recognizes important emotional signals as key information that should be used to help get results. Team emotion management. Team emotion management is the team members' ability to use their awareness of the group's emotions as a whole to be flexible and direct behavior in a positive direction. This means managing the collective emotional reaction of the team in response to a given situation. Teams that can manage these tendencies are far more productive than those that cannot. Using the team whose presentation to the CEO was postponed as an example, will the group members wallow in their disappointment by stalling all progress on the project for a month? Maybe they will make the next 4 meetings gripe sessions. Or better yet, maybe the next 4 meetings will be canceled altogether. An emotionally intelligent team would manage members' emotions and use them to motivate efforts to strengthen their presentation during the extra time given. A team with effective emotion management skills will have at least 1 or 2 members who will pull the group out of the doldrums and get everyone back on track. This does not mean telling the group to get over their disappointment, but instead to feel it as well as begin looking constructively toward what is next. Team emotion management is one of the more difficult team emotional intelligence skills because most of the members of any group are not yet comfortable managing their emotions publicly or discussing emotions in a group setting. It requires a group of people to work together to spot when emotions are steering their progress. They have to stop and ask themselves if their progress will be helped or hurt by bringing their emotions to the surface. For example, if the group is feeling excited and motivated after a visit from a top executive who has thanked them for what they've accomplished, their willingness to take risks and to be more creative will be bolstered. Similarly, if excitement turns into overzealousness or imperviousness to mistakes, the team could overlook significant risk. The important step after feeling the excitement is to couple it with reason and action. Managing emotions as a group requires noticing when emotions are playing a role and managing them so the team can move forward. Internal relationship management. Internal relationship management refers to the team member's ability to interact effectively with one another in order to respond well to difficult or challenging situations. This is the sum of each team member's ability to interact constructively with all other team members. For example, suppose one team member has been experiencing a high level of stress at home lately and is having trouble producing reports on time and without errors. The team depends on these reports for making decisions. Should the team avoid confronting the situation by tolerating the reports as they are? Should the other team members pressure this person even more by sending curt email reminders? Or might there be a team member who can stop by his office to offer support and help him draft the reports? Efforts at managing relationships within the group serve to strengthen the bond between team members. Team members who manage relationships with the rest of the group, both during and outside meetings, minimize the challenges that come up when emotions are strong. A team's internal relationship management skills are strengthened by the ability of each team member to practice social competence. The team's performance is enhanced when each team member takes responsibility for being aware of his or her emotions. During team meetings, self-management and social awareness are critical for everyone in the room to avoid problems such as interrupting or ignoring people or putting them down. Each team member is responsible for developing and maintaining a positive or at least productive working relationship with every other team member. External relationship management. External relationship management is the team's ability to act effectively as a group across organizational boundaries. Consider a design team that invites a member of the quality assurance group to its final planning session for a new product. Do the team members treat the person as an outsider to be ignored, as a member of their extended team, or as an unwelcome guest? The team that can proactively welcome the advice and concerns of another group that has the power to make a go, no-go decision is the team that is using external relationship management skills to its benefit. These relationships often propel a team's objectives forward, and teams that pay no attention to it often lag down the path to their goals. Very often, teams focus solely on relationships within the group, and this creates pitfalls for them in the long run. A high-performing team may celebrate a little too zealously, forgetting to thank those outside the team who helped to make their achievements possible. When difficulties face this team in the future, outside parties may not feel like going the extra mile to help out. Teams also have to compete for resources or to get their projects approved. External relationship management means that team determines who has a good relationship with the decision maker who will determine what that team needs. The team can select an ambassador to create visibility or support for its work. Work accomplished in groups is dependent upon influence. The O-Ring engineering team had the critical facts prepared, yet they weren't able to influence the decision-makers outside their group. The groundwork, good working relationships with those outside the team, had not been laid in advance. 17 years after the Challenger disaster, the Columbia Space Shuttle was lost as it re-entered the atmosphere. An important cause of the crash, cited by the Columbia Accident Investigation Board, was the decision-making at NASA post-Challenger. The Rogers Commission found a NASA blinded by its can-do attitude, a cultural artifact of the Apollo era that was inappropriate in a space shuttle program so strapped by schedule pressures and shortages that spare parts had to be cannibalized from one vehicle to launch another. After the Columbia Shuttle was launched, dangerous foam debris was identified that would jeopardize its ability to land safely. Engineering teams responded to cost and schedule demands over safety concerns. They suggested potential ways for landing the shuttle rather than plans for a rescue mission. Swayed by the prevailing culture at NASA, they lacked the team emotional intelligence skills needed to rise above the policy and rescue the ill-fated mission. Improving team emotional intelligence. Though formal research on team emotional intelligence is still in its infancy, it has been clearly demonstrated that emotionally intelligent teams achieve their goals and contribute more to the success of organizations than those that are not. Teams that score low in an assessment of workgroup emotional intelligence underperform when compared with their counterparts with high emotional intelligence. Specifically, their ability to focus on tasks and achieve their goals is significantly lower than that of teams that score high in emotional intelligence. Training in emotional intelligence skills improves a team's job performance and emotional intelligence scores. It improves a group's ability to focus and brings its performance into line with that of teams that are already high in emotional intelligence. Any group that wants to develop team emotional intelligence skills can do so. The hardest part is knowing what to work on. Team emotional intelligence means that members of the team have and use emotional intelligence skills for the good of the group. It does not mean that all team members are emotionally intelligent all of the time. Members of the group are allowed to be human and to have days when they feel discouraged or even overly confident. It's important that other team members balance emotions that may not be realistic or helpful to the situation by helping the group remain aware. Team members must take time to get to know one another before they can understand one another. One popular technique is to conduct an off-site meeting to discover more about one another's values, interests, talents, and styles. A team can go to lunch or have coffee together as a group. Team members should also check in with one another at the beginning of a meeting and at key points in a design process or any other task they work on together. Uncomfortable interactions happen for a reason. Teams need to take the time to discover the reason. If one team member is uncomfortable, resisting, or reacting, his or her discomfort should be acknowledged, and the person should be told that the entire team is seeking to understand. When the group is uncomfortable with something, someone should recognize the mood in the room and ask, "Why is this so hard for us to discuss?" Usually, the group members will be relieved that they do not have to play along with something they do not agree with or hide their true opinions. A more constructive, or at least genuine discussion can then follow. A team can enhance its emotional perspective by focusing more on the bigger picture. If team members have opposing views, the group should discuss these views from each team member's perspective. If everyone agrees, ask, "What are we overlooking? What angle haven't we heard or thought through?" The group or any team member can ask quiet members what they think and get members who talk a lot to ask questions of others. When things are uncertain, someone in the group should reinforce the team's confidence in its ability to succeed. This person does not have to be the team leader or even the same person every time. It may be the newest player on the team, the quiet one, or anyone who is willing to engage the team in developing a more positive outlook. Together, team members should focus on what the group can control. They should remind one another of the larger goal and its greater importance than the current disappointment or frustration. They can revisit how the team responded to a previous, similarly difficult situation with good results. They can discuss how to move beyond the emotional pitfalls that hinder teams. Group members can take matters into their own hands to improve their team's emotional intelligence and achieve its greatest goals. Chapter 8. Taking Emotional Intelligence Home. Emotionally intelligent relationships. Deepening the connection with your partner. The determining factor in whether wives feel satisfied with sex, romance, and passion in their marriage is, by 70%, the quality of the couple's friendship. For men, the determining factor is, by 70%, the quality of the couple's friendship. So, men and women come from the same planet after all. John Gottman, Ph.D. My grandfather has been blind most of my life. After several decades of farming the sandy soil in eastern South Dakota, he contracted a disease that destroyed his vision. At 96 years of age, he is a captive audience for questions about relationships. He's also a worthy target for my barrage of questions. He's been married to the same person for 70 years. He and my grandmother compare their relationship to their many years spent farming. Proper focus plus hard work pulled them through difficult times. More than just sticking with it, they've actively worked together and have reaped the benefits of 7 decades of love and companionship. When they reminisce about the bond that has held them together, they speak of an allegiance to compromise. Whether raising young children during the height of the Great Depression or being trapped indoors for days during the blizzard of '62, they invested energy in repairing arguments as opposed to intensifying them. Even during conflict, they share a commitment to find and understand the other person's perspective. They've always been able to tend to each other as they did their fields of corn. They avoid the slash and burn technique at all costs. As an emotionally intelligent couple, they've stayed together as a result of their enduring search for common ground. Repairs. A new romantic relationship is a lot like buying a car. Driving it off the lot is pure bliss. As you look around, you can scarcely take it all in. Everything smells, sounds, and looks terrific. You coast through weeks, maybe even months, of happy driving before it happens for the first time. Something breaks, and you need to repair it. Vehicles, like relationships, require repairs to keep them running smoothly. If a car is worth keeping, parts will need to be replaced sometimes. A certain amount of your time and energy will be spent keeping it in tip-top shape. Sometimes there are surprises, but nothing a trip to the mechanic can't fix. Repairs do more than keep your car running. They are the key to an emotionally intelligent relationship. If you don't address the regular wear and tear that accompanies togetherness, you and your partner are sure to find yourselves stuck at the side of the road. In studies conducted at the University of Washington, Dr. John Gottman and his team of researchers have predicted future divorce with 93% accuracy by watching couples for only 5 minutes to see how often they repair their disagreements. Their predictions have held true for couples they've continued to track a full 14 years later. This research shows that how often a couple disagrees is irrelevant. It's the effort both partners make to resolve conflict amicably and repair the situation that influences the success of the relationship. Repairs are critical because many disagreements between partners are based on permanent differences of opinion. If you think it's best to shut the air conditioner off at 6 p.m. on hot summer days to save money, and your spouse thinks the best time is 8 p.m., neither one of you will ever be right. But that won't stop you from arguing about it all summer long. Disagreements are a given. It's what you do about them that matters. An emotionally intelligent relationship is driven by two people who focus their energy on repairing their disagreements. Repair means showing love and respect for each other despite the dilemma. When you argue with your partner, every word and every act serves to either make things better or make them worse. Repairs take many forms, but all are aimed at moving the argument to resolution. A repair can be anything from suggesting a compromise, "This summer let's turn the air conditioner off at 7 p.m., to owning your half of the situation. "I realize that turning it off at 8 p.m. is more expensive," to using humor to break the tension. "You know, this wouldn't be a problem if we lived in Alaska." A repair attempt sends the powerful signal that you care, you respect your partner, and your love is more important than proving you are right. Repairs are the biggest sign that emotional intelligence skills are being used in a relationship. But how do you initiate a repair? First, you have to realize that a repair will not solve the disagreement. It is an act of moving beyond the expression of anger, resentment, and hostility toward your partner. The first hope for a successful repair comes from your own self-awareness. You cannot improve an argument if you are being thrown over a barrel by your emotions. Disagreements bring all of your feelings about your partner rushing to the surface, and therefore it can be a real challenge to maintain any sort of perspective on your behavior and emotions. Do not waste time feeling guilty about your feelings in an argument. Focus your energy on understanding your emotions. If you find that your emotions are so strong that you can't think clearly, it is probably best to save the discussion for later. If you are so emotional that you are getting tunnel vision, feeling sick, or just in a haze, the most successful repair may seem like none at all. Explain to your partner that you are overwhelmed and need some time to cool off and get your thoughts together. Your argument is not going anywhere, so you don't need to pressure yourself into a discussion when you can't think clearly. If you are composed enough to have some perspective on the situation, you can initiate the next step in a repair. Use your social awareness skills to focus your thoughts on what things must be like from your partner's point of view. Not what you think they are like, but rather what your partner is thinking and feeling. You can't launch a successful repair until you fully understand why your partner is doing whatever it is that he or she is doing. You have to show your partner that you care about how things look from his or her point of view, even if you do not agree with his or her perspective. You need to move beyond thinking of ways to convince your partner of your opinions and ask yourself what you can do to honor his or her feelings. Showing respect for your partner's opinions, whether they are right or wrong, is the key to compromise. The appearance of a successful repair is as varied as the problems it can solve. A repair that works in one situation with one person may just make things worse in another. Saying, "What exactly do you mean by that?" can sound as though you are minimizing the issues during one argument, but be received as a sign of wanting to make things better during another. To repair successfully, arm yourself with the knowledge that many attempts will crash and burn. Even an empathetic comment such as, "I understand what you are saying," can be perceived as belittling if your partner is defensive or not accustomed to your saying this. Be ready to try a number of repairs in a single argument and expect that they will not all go off without a hitch. A failed repair attempt can create hurt feelings and bruised egos. Lean into your discomfort and work to tolerate the pain that surfaces when your partner misunderstands your efforts to make things better. The more you do so, the more he or she will be receptive and do the same. Couples with the best skill at repairing disagreements are those who try to do so the most often. Your repeated attempts at empathy and understanding will not be lost on a loving, committed partner. It will also help your relationship to discuss repairs together. If you can talk about your arguments, you are both more likely to initiate repairs the next time you fight. When repair attempts are always one-sided, the relationship usually fails. Both partners need to work toward resolving their disagreements. When you talk to your partner about repairs, you develop an understanding that you will both use them during your next argument. Even if your partner has trouble making repairs the next time the two of you argue, he or she will likely recognize your effort and realize that it is an attempt to show concern and make things better. Use your emotional intelligence skills to discuss and repair arguments. You must know yourself and understand your feelings throughout the argument. This means being self-aware enough to recognize when you can tolerate initiating a repair. You need to use your social awareness skills to read the other person, and the argument will go more smoothly if you self-manage throughout. Repairs don't require both partners to act with emotional intelligence. Sometimes, just one partner will have the perspective to self-manage and initiate a repair. When the other responds in kind, the relationship builds an unshakable strength that can only come from emotional intelligence. Emotionally intelligent parenting. Raising a happy child. The joys of parents are secret, and so are their griefs and fears. Francis Bacon. Jim Carrey had a difficult childhood. His family was quite poor, and while other 16-year-olds were going to high school and playing sports, Jim worked with his family in a wheel factory and even spent a year living out of their van. Humor was Jim's salvation. He could bend his face into silly positions that left everyone laughing hysterically. His father, Percy, was supportive of his son's unique ability to escape from the challenges of daily living. More than anything, Percy wanted Jim to feel comfortable living in his own flexible skin. At 14, Jim's comedic talents led to a night trying stand-up comedy at Yuck Yucks, a local comedy club. Jim wanted desperately to perform, but he was terrified the week before the event over how his jokes would be received by strangers. Recognizing Jim's fear, his dad spent hours helping him practice his act. Percy wanted Jim to work through his anxiety and build it into confidence, and he knew a 14-year-old could not do this on his own. They went to the club together that night, but Jim bombed on stage alone. Despite that setback, Percy convinced Jim to continue pursuing comedy. By age 19, Jim was back on stage and even became a regular on the Canadian comedy circuit. Laughing audiences confirmed what his father told him all along. Jim was funny, but he knew the real test for any comedian was in Hollywood, so he packed his belongings and headed for California. It didn't take long for Jim to realize he was suddenly a little fish in a very big pond. After 2 years of playing bad gigs and living in seedy motels, Jim gave up and went back to Canada. Back at home, Percy reminded Jim that he was a phenomenal talent, yet he had to persist at any level if he wanted to succeed. When Jim returned to Los Angeles, he often drove his clunky car up Mulholland Drive and parked on a hill overlooking Hollywood. One evening, fueled by his father's belief in his comedic talent, he wrote himself a check for $10 million. The memo read, "For acting services rendered." By the time Percy died, years later, Jim was the first actor ever to receive $20 million for starring in a film. Jim's grief was intense at his father's funeral. When it was Jim's turn to approach the casket, he decided to express his gratitude for his father's love. Jim leaned over Percy, whispered a final goodbye, and slipped the check for $10 million into his suit pocket, the symbol of the ardent support he had carried all these years. A parent has the single greatest opportunity to influence his child's emotional intelligence. Percy Carey's patient guidance did far more for Jim than helping him to understand his talents. His support reinforced Jim's ability to lean into the discomfort that comes with rejection and to believe in himself. Percy taught his son self-management, knowing it was the skill he would need most to realize his tremendous potential. Emotional intelligence skills are made, not born. A parent's guidance in understanding and processing emotions is the driving force behind a child's ultimate ability to demonstrate emotional intelligence. We have heard it said that an empathetic manager can't help but be empathic at home with her children as well. As obvious as this may sound, it simply isn't true. There are no guarantees of consistency between how we behave in our personal life and our professional life. People do a great job of drawing a line between these roles. A charismatic, motivating manager may be very disconnected in her relationship with a son or daughter. The empathy and understanding she uses to connect with her staff and win over customers can quickly disappear when she's back home trying to get a squirming 3-year-old into his pajamas. A sincere motivation to develop emotional intelligence skills can and should cross the artificial boundary that so many of us erect between how we are at work and how we are at home. The challenges you face as a parent don't have to determine your child's emotional intelligence. A study conducted at Emory University showed how a child's emotional intelligence is a product of the parent's demonstration of emotional intelligence skills, not their personal experience of emotional distress. Children learn emotional intelligence skills from their parents. Without the example of their parents, children miss out on the best source to learn from. Every moment you spend with your child is an opportunity to demonstrate emotional intelligence. When you refrain from yelling, your child will also. When you notice and ask about your child's sad feelings, your child will learn to show sympathy for friends. Parents who practice emotional intelligence with their children raise boys and girls who are happier and better socially adjusted, get better grades, and later achieve a higher level of professional success. Children who increase their emotional intelligence skills decrease their levels of truancy and delinquent behavior. Regardless of where a child starts, increasing her emotional intelligence improves her connection with her peers and reduces her experimentation with alcohol and tobacco. If you model emotional intelligence for your children, they will develop the skills they need to get along better with others, and they will experience a greater level of success that will last into adulthood. Coaching through conflict. Most kids display mood swings that appear wider, deeper, and quicker than those of adults. Ask any parent of a 2.5-year-old, and they will describe giddy bliss 1 minute, morphing into utter despair the next. During that magical 4 to 7 year range, Parents enjoy their children's increasing use of words to say what they feel, but they also become involved in extended dramas about seemingly trivial matters. Pre-adolescents begin to take charge of what they do with how they feel. Adolescents feel sophisticated emotions and hormones for which their life experiences haven't yet prepared them. Each phase of raising children is characterized by strong emotions that surface in new ways. At every age, emotions catch developing children and parents by surprise. To develop emotional intelligence skills, your child must feel permitted, even invited, to experience these emotions fully and learn to understand them. To help children understand their emotions, you first have to make it okay for them to have them. Embracing your child's emotions is often a simple and unremarkable act. If you make it your duty, the cumulative impact on your child will be profound. Embracing your daughter's feelings can be as simple as saying, "It hurts to lose your favorite blanket," instead of, "Stop crying, we can get another one." The first statement tells her that her feelings are normal and important. Neither statement takes away the pain of losing the blanket. Her crying will continue either way. But the first response models emotional awareness and teaches that what she thinks and feels is valid. Young children can't contemplate events in any sophisticated way, but their minds soak up their experiences like a sponge. You shape your child each day by teaching her how to deal with her feelings. Embracing your child's emotions is hardest to do when it's needed most. Emotions erupt during conflicts that put parents on edge. When your child does something that is foolish and beneath his capability, it can be hard to avoid pouncing on the situation like a panther. When your 3-year-old cracks the neighbor boy on the head with a toy for refusing to share, you probably won't be inclined to lean over and murmur, "I understand that you feel angry, honey, but it's not acceptable to smack Johnny on the head with your truck." We realize that such a response isn't realistic in most situations, so you will have to send the message to your child in other ways. Your tone, your speed in acting, and even what you do teaches your child about emotions. A response that shows you understand your child's anger, everybody gets angry, right, will teach him more about controlling himself the next time than grabbing him by the arm and dragging him out of the room. Conflict and passive resistance generate strong emotions in parents, too. It can be just as annoying to watch your child make herself vulnerable as it can to watch her hurt another kid. But careful consideration of the situation shows that children express their feelings through their actions. This is normal. Toddlers hit other children or stand paralyzed by others' aggression until they learn a better way to express themselves. Your job is to model comfort with emotions and coach your child through doing something productive with them. As the parent, using your emotional intelligence skills increases the likelihood that your children will do the same when faced with challenges. The results of your efforts, however difficult the act may feel at the time, are long-term. Your children will grow into adults who know how to enhance their relationships and manage their behavior to get what they want out of life. Coaching a child through her emotions is every bit as challenging and uncomfortable as facing your own. Like so many things in life, if we don't act carefully, we are bound to repeat old patterns. Progress comes from choosing the response that is the most effective over that which is easiest and most readily available. Emotional intelligence offers a profound opportunity to build a new perspective on everything that's important in your life. Increasing your emotional intelligence is simply a matter of waking up to the emotions that drive you. When you know them well, you can make your own decisions about where they will take you. Living with emotional intelligence. You're probably wondering what you should do with everything you've learned from this audiobook. We've presented ideas rapidly with the sincere hope that you'll spend your time developing new skills rather than reading about them. Emotional intelligence is a product of how well you understand yourself and those around you. You can't learn that by studying models, memorizing facts, or reading motivational prose. Your emotional intelligence profile will be your guide to which skills are your strengths, as well as what you need to work on most. Study your results from the emotional intelligence appraisal carefully. They are a window to your current level of emotional intelligence. Appendix: a technical report on the Emotional Intelligence Appraisal. Jean H. Riley, M.S., Quinn D. Sanders, M.S., Lac D. Sue, M.S., and April D. West, M.S. Talent Smart Psychometric Research Team. Anytime you use a psychological test, it is critical to understand how it was developed, as well as some of the finer points of how the test works. For a test to be valid for the purpose at hand, research is conducted to confirm the quality of the questions, including how scores connect to important outcomes. The Emotional Intelligence Appraisal is set to the highest standards set forth by the American Psychological Association. What is the Emotional Intelligence Appraisal? It is a survey suite that measures emotional intelligence, EQ, quickly and accurately. The original aim of the test was to provide a quick, valid, and intuitive assessment of EQ that would be readily available to the public and based on the prevailing model. We refer to this as a survey suite because it comes in 3 editions: the Me edition, a self-assessment; the Multi-Rater MR edition, 360-degree feedback from coworkers, friends, or family; and the Team edition, the collective EQ of an intact work group. An online administration of the self-assessment, the Me edition, can be accessed by using the unique code provided inside this audiobook CD wallet. Or if you purchase the download version of this audiobook from audible.com, the code that was emailed to you. The Emotional Intelligence Appraisal provides scores and easy-to-understand recommendations that are customized to fit the user's unique skill profile. The test measures overall emotional intelligence and scores in the 4 key skill areas with just 28 questions. The average administration time for the online edition of the test is 7 minutes. The online format contains a complete test and interactive e-learning using Hollywood movies, goal tracking, and dynamic action plans. Each copy of the Emotional Intelligence QuickBook includes a unique code on a label inside the CD's wallet that you will need in order to take the test online. If you've purchased the download version of this audiobook from audible.com, the code will be emailed to you. What theory of emotional intelligence is the Emotional Intelligence Appraisal based on? It measures emotional intelligence using Daniel Goleman's model, as introduced in Primal Leadership. This theory is grounded in the idea that emotional intelligence is subdivided into 4 skills: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management, with these skills rolling up into personal and social competence. The test provides an overall EQ score, a score for personal and social competence, and a score for each of the 4 skills. Strong intercorrelations among the 4 skills reveal personal and social competence as the most accurate emotional intelligence scores, other than the overall EQ score. The 4 skills lack the construct validity needed to stand as independent components, but they are intuitive to retain and follow, so they are also provided as face-valid components of EQ. Is the information I enter secure? Yes. All responses to the test are stored on a secure remote server. Talent Smart monitors our servers 24 hours a day to ensure that no one will have access to your results or saved comments. Does my test expire? Your results do not expire. Once you take the test, you will have immediate access to your results and can come back and see them online anytime you wish. Does the Emotional Intelligence Appraisal focus only on work situations? The questions are worded to apply broadly to a variety of situations. You can use the Emotional Intelligence Appraisal to evaluate your emotional intelligence at work or at home. Most people tend to behave differently at work than they do at home, and vice versa. In most instances, it is best to pick one setting, work or home, before beginning the test, and keep that frame of mind while answering the questions. Why is the scale 0 to 100? The 100-point scale is used because of the familiarity this range holds for people. The majority of people has attended education systems where the same range of scores was applied to their evaluations. It's much easier for someone to compare a score of 77 in one skill to a 93 in another than it is to compare the equivalent raw scores, a 4.2 and a 5.1. While there is no absolute level of mastery for emotional intelligence skills, these skills can always be developed further. It is accepted that the higher you score, the better you are at using emotional intelligence skills. What is the average range of scores? Scores on the emotional intelligence appraisal are normally distributed, with a mean score of 75. This means that the majority, 68% of scores, will fall in the middle of the range, between 65 and 85, and fewer scores will fall at the extreme high or low ends of the scale. This is important because this type of scale is different from scores in school, where average is often perceived negatively. Scoring within the average range on this test is to be anticipated. How can the emotional intelligence appraisal be accurate with only 28 questions? Skill tests tend to be long and cumbersome. They often exceed 100 questions, and this makes taking them a chore. Contrary to common belief, skill tests do not require large numbers of questions to accurately measure a single skill. The tradition of lengthy tests has more to do with the subject feeling as if he or she has been accurately assessed than the accuracy or usefulness of the test. The emotional intelligence appraisal measures primarily one skill, emotional intelligence. Therefore, a test of emotional intelligence doesn't require a large number of questions. A parallel example is the Beck Depression Inventory, BDI, the most trusted measure of depression available. The BDI measures depression, a single construct, with just 13 questions. The emotional intelligence appraisal accomplishes a similar feat by measuring the two constructs of emotional intelligence, personal and social competence, with just 28 questions, and it doesn't require prerequisite education or training to use. Is the emotional intelligence appraisal reliable and valid? The emotional intelligence appraisal is both reliable and valid. Reliability refers to whether the test is consistent over time, while validity refers to whether the test is measuring what it is intended to measure. The internal consistency reliability figures for the skills measured by the test range from 0.85 to 0.91, a strong indication that the test is reliable. The standard level of acceptable reliability is 0.70 or greater. Analyses of construct validity suggest that the best fit for the model is an overall EQ score with division along the lines of personal and social competence. A series of specialized analyses, principal component analysis, Cattell's Scree test, Kaiser-Meyer-Auckland, and Bartlett's test of sphericity, each indicate that personal and social competence are the main factors in emotional intelligence. In studies measuring emotional intelligence and job performance, the emotional intelligence appraisal explains a highly significant amount of the variance in job performance for people holding a variety of positions. Across studies, the Me edition, self-report, explains a significant amount, nearly 20%, of the variance in job performance, and the Multi-Rater edition, 360-degree report, explains a highly significant amount, nearly 60%, of performance. An analysis comparing leaders' emotional intelligence scores on the test to key financial indicators shows that leaders who are high in emotional intelligence are 20% more productive than their low EQ counterparts. This amounts to $250,000 more productivity for those leaders high in IQ. How were the questions designed? Dr. Bradbury and Dr. Greaves, with years of subject matter expertise and applied assessment development experience, developed a pool of questions for each of the 4 skill scales. The authors used an iterative process of writing draft questions and reworking them to ensure that they passed the test of being both necessary and sufficient. The term necessary refers to all questions that are required to measure a skill, and the term sufficient refers to only those questions that are required to measure the skill. In other words, no extra questions were added to the test, and no questions that were required were missing from the test. Once the set of questions met the face validity criteria, they were presented to other subject matter experts. Questions were removed that didn't contribute to the face validity of the test, as determined by the subject matter experts. Next, questions were removed that didn't contribute to the statistical validity of the test. The final length of the test is based solely on what is necessary and sufficient to measure your emotional intelligence. Dr. Bradbury's and Dr. Greaves' approach to writing questions improves upon two important drawbacks to the pure behavioral description approach. First, the test questions do not attempt to measure every example of the behaviors that make up a skill. The questions avoid this redundancy by describing critical aspects of each skill that indicate its presence. Skill statements on the emotional intelligence appraisal are rated on a frequency scale, ranging from never to always. People tend to have a good idea of how often they demonstrate different behaviors. The key benefit of this approach is that it measures the same skill as other tests of emotional intelligence, but with fewer questions. How was the emotional intelligence appraisal normed? Normative samples are descriptive standards against which individuals can compare their performance to the performance of other people. The test uses external norms, meaning that an individual's score is compared to the scores of more than 100,000 other people. The normative sample includes male and female subjects ages 18 to 80+ years, working in every industry and every job function worldwide. All subjects completed the English language edition of the test. Does the emotional intelligence appraisal reduce self-serving bias? Self-serving bias is the tendency to enhance self-scoring by taking credit for success and denying responsibility for failure. All self-report tests are subject to such bias, and the goal is to minimize. If you wish to develop emotional intelligence